The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell starts right now. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Jen, I remember Tuesday night when we were getting a report from Georgia about Eric Gisler, who was pulling off an amazing win for Democrats in a very strongly Republican district, a legislative district down there. He's going to join us tonight, and he's going to tell us how he's going to tell us how he did it. I have a strong suspicion we're going to hear the words affordability and Trump.
I bet.
But I'm going to let him tell the story. That's coming up.
That's great. That was quite a flip. I look forward to watching that and hearing what he has to say.
Yeah, I'm really eager to hear from him. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. Well, it has been 3 weeks since the Washington Post broke the story about the two-strike attack on a small boat in the Caribbean, 1,500 miles from the United States. It was the first Donald Trump-ordered attack on small boats powered by outboard motors, open boats, that Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense suspected to be carrying drugs bound for the United States. The first missile to hit the boat destroyed the boat and killed 9 of the 11 people on the boat. 2 men clinging to the wreckage were then killed by a second missile. It is the second missile that is the focus of most attention. But NYU law professor and former Pentagon lawyer Ryan Goodman says that none of the killing ordered by Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth in the attacks on those small boats in the Caribbean is legal. Ryan Goodman says it is, quote, just murder. New reporting by the Washington Post today indicates the boat was not headed for the United States. The Post reports people familiar with Admiral Bradley's account to lawmakers said that the cargo in this case was heading next to Suriname, a small country east of Venezuela, not the United States. As the Post and others have reported, most of the narcotics that move through the Caribbean are headed toward Europe and Western Africa rather than the U.S. That further underscores that this boat was not a threat to the United States and not a lawful target, Todd Huntley said. Todd Huntley is a former military lawyer who will be our first guest tonight. The Washington Post and the New York Times have new reporting today on how the decision was made to kill the 2 men who survived the first attack. The Post reports in the minutes after U.S. forces attacked a suspected drug smuggling boat near Trinidad, Admiral Frank M. Bradley, the commander overseeing the operation, faced a choice. A laser-guided bomb had killed 9 of the 11 people on board, sunk the boat's motor, and capsized the vessel's front end, according to people who have viewed or been briefed on the classified video of the operation. As smoke from the blast cleared, a live surveillance feed provided by a U.S. aircraft high overhead showed 2 men had survived and were attempting to flip the wreckage. The video feed showed that the 2 men were struggling to stay atop the flotsam, which people who've seen the footage described as roughly the size of a dining room table. Bradley turned to the military lawyer advising him and requested input, according to members of Congress who spoke with him privately last week, and people later briefed on those conversations. Under the law of armed conflict, were the men now shipwrecked and therefore out of the fight, rendering them unlawful targets? The admiral decided that definition did not apply, these people said. Instead, what Bradley explained to lawmakers left some with the impression that there was a prevailing lack of certainty about the existence of any drugs beneath the wreckage and whether the survivors had a means to call for help or intended to surrender. When he concluded that further action was warranted, he ordered a second strike, killing both men. The Washington Post reported there were 30-plus minutes between the first strike and the second. The Post reports that Admiral Bradley told lawmakers, quote, U.S. intelligence showed that everyone on the boat was a narco-terrorist, consistent with the administration's definition, which allowed for deadly force. That is the legal question here. What in American law allows for deadly force in this situation? Most legal experts say the answer to that is nothing in American law allows for deadly force in this situation. Admiral Bradley consulted with a military lawyer before ordering the second deadly strike. The Post reports there was dissent in the operations room over whether the survivors were viable targets after the first strike, according to 2 people. What the lawyer advised, though, and whether they rendered a definitive opinion remains unclear. The Post reports that Admiral Bradley told members of Congress that he wasn't trying to kill those two men. Quote, at the core of Bradley's defense of the second strike, according to several people familiar with his conversations on Capitol Hill, was his assertion that the attack was not directed at the two survivors, but at the boat wreckage and any cocaine it may have sheltered. The admiral also theorized, multiple people said, that the two survivors could have drifted to shore or found a way to sail the wreckage to their intended rendezvous point. If Admiral Bradley ever says that in public testimony, there isn't a boat owner in America who is going to be able to believe him. Sail the wreckage to their intended rendezvous point. That would have been absolutely impossible. Disabled boats with no power or sails and no ability to move cannot ever be sailed to any intended rendezvous point. And according to some witnesses, what we're talking about was a hunk of fiberglass about the size of a dining room table. Senator Mark Warner told us on this program last week that he believes the two men were incapacitated when they were clinging to that wreckage. Even if they were the world's strongest swimmers, there is nothing they could have done on the open sea to control where that dining room table was going to float. Mother Nature was completely in charge of where that stuff was going. It was up to the current, the tide, and the wind. The Post reports when the U.S. aircraft providing the live video feed scanned the surrounding area, it did not find another vessel coming to the boat's aid. But today, Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, said something publicly that no one else who has seen the video or been briefed by Admiral Bradley has said.
We have exquisite intelligence about all of this. There was another vessel in close proximity that was headed their direction. They seemed to be waving their arms at some point to indicate that that vessel that was off outside of the video that we have was headed that way, and so that they could continue their mission.
Is that Admiral Bradley possibly changing his story when he met with Mike Johnson today? It would be impossible for any other boat to be in the region without the American military identifying. It would be impossible for there to have been another boat in the area that was not captured in the electronic scans of the area that are in the possession of Pete Hegseth's Defense Department. Exactly how far away was this other boat? And why is Mike Johnson suddenly using that other boat as a justification for the killing? The New York Times is reporting today that the Defense Department apparently changed its kill the survivors policy after this attack. The New York Times reports on October 16th, the U.S. military picked up two survivors by helicopter. They were from Colombia and Ecuador. The contrast between the decision to kill the survivors of the September 2nd strike and the choice to rescue the survivors of the October 16th strike has also focused attention on whether the Pentagon changed its policy between those two attacks. On October 27th, the American military spotted a survivor clinging to wreckage in the water after a U.S. attack in the eastern Pacific and alerted a nearby Mexican military boat. The Pentagon said the Mexican authorities never found anyone. Leading off our discussion tonight is Todd Hundley, a retired Navy captain who served in Afghanistan with a Joint Special Operations Task Force. He served as a judge advocate for over 23 years and was the Chief of Information Operations Law for U.S. Special Operations Command. He's now the director of the National Security Law Program at Georgetown University. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and I very much wanted to read and that's just some of your expertise in your resume there that we use to frame what you have to say to us tonight. What do you make of the new reporting we're getting today from the Washington Post and the New York Times?
It's still very troubling, and it's still leaving a lot of holes in what we know. And I think making it even more important that at least members of Congress get to see the entire video, and perhaps the American public as well, so that hopefully some of this fog of war, as Secretary Hegseth said, is lifted and we can see what actually happened. That conversation, that dissension that was reported in the Operations Center sounds to me like things were not very clear legally as to whether the authority to take that second strike were there.
Yeah, and on that, is there likely any recording of the discussion that was going on in there?
There's probably not a recording of the discussion, but while this operation is going down, all of the people supporting the operation would likely have been on a classified chat. And those chat logs, as they communicate back and forth, probably clarifying what they're seeing, clarifying the intelligence they had, talking about what type of weapon system to use to target the boat, that would have all been recorded.
What do you make of Admiral Bradley? According to reports, let's stress that we don't know what he's actually saying in these rooms, but we are getting leaked information about what he's saying in some of these briefings. And according to one of those leaks, he is now saying that the second strike was not intended to kill those two men, but apparently was aimed just at that hunk of debris the size of a dining room table. Is there any conceivable way that you could launch that strike without thinking this is going to kill those two men?
No, they would have known that that the strike would have killed those two individuals. And again, in my experience, what this looks like was a bleeding over of the tactics, techniques, and procedures and the legal authorities that were used for 20 plus years in the counterterrorism fight in Afghanistan and other places. In those cases, right, if there is a military objective that is still operable, that they can target, and there are two members of the declared hostile force, the terrorist organization there, whether they're killed or wounded or not, doesn't matter. The rules are just totally different when we're talking about people shipwrecked at sea.
Yeah, so some people are using the phrase when they think the question of, is this a war crime? Can there be a war crime without a war?
No, and that's something I think that needs to be stressed. As you mentioned in your opening, Ryan Goodman's assessment that this is not an armed conflict, despite what the administration has said, despite the administration declaring these cartels foreign terrorist organizations. No, there has to be an actual ongoing armed conflict to be a war crime. So these would be simply murder, or if enough of them happen, perhaps crimes against humanity.
And as we go forward, what other than seeing the video, what else would you want to have if you were trying to really figure out what happened in this case?
Yes, I think that one of the most important things that Congress gets access to is the execution order that would have been issued from the Secretary of Defense down to Joint Special Operations Command and Admiral Bradley, as that would lay out the authorities that had been delegated down, the authorities upon which the operation was to take place, any perhaps rules of engagement, limitations, including how they would treat captured or survivors of strike.
We have the reporting in the New York Times today that they changed their policy, apparently, or their practice anyway, after this strike by rescuing survivors in other strikes. And those survivors that they rescued, they ended up sending back to the countries that they're from. They didn't try any judicial procedure with them whatsoever.
No, that to me, that seems very odd. Again, based on my experience in Afghanistan, if we were in an armed conflict and we could capture members of the enemy force, we would want to capture them, interrogate them, gain further intelligence from them, and then put them into some sort of judicial process to punish them or just hold them until the end of the conflict. So if these individuals are, as what's being reported, known narco terrorists on the list for targeting, it just kind of baffles the mind why they didn't at least hold them for questioning and bring back to the United States.
Todd Huntley, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. And coming up, when Donald Trump illegally sent the National Guard to Los Angeles, California Senator Alex Padilla wanted to know why. He was thrown to the floor and threatened with arrest inside a federal building in Los Angeles. And now a federal judge has ruled that Donald Trump's use of the California National Guard is illegal. Senator Padilla will join us next. They grabbed a United States senator and threw him to the floor of a federal building because he wanted to know why the National Guard had come to Los Angeles and surrounded that federal building where absolutely nothing was happening.
Sir, hands up, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your
I also want to
hands off.
how many of our ICE agents have been docked.
On the ground. On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you let me get in my hands, go ahead, put them behind my back.
All right, cool.
One hand. Lay flat. Lay flat.
Other hand, sir. Other hand.
There's no recording allowed out here. I did not know. There's no recording allowed out here.
In the age of Trump and the disgusting, poisonous video created by Donald Trump, that one has a special place. When Senator Alex Padilla left the federal building in West Los Angeles that day, he said this.
If this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country. We will hold this administration accountable.
And they did. Yesterday, a federal judge ruled that Donald Trump's use of the National Guard in Los Angeles is illegal. Judge Charles Breyer crushed Donald Trump in his ruling, saying it defies the record and common sense to conclude that risks stemming from protests in August, October, or even present day could not have been sufficiently managed without resorting to the National Guard. Joining us now, California's senior Senator Alex Padilla. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Budget Committee. Senator, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I'm sorry that I had to show that video again to set the context for this audience. I didn't want to make you live through that again. But you've gone from being pushed around by those guys to beating Donald Trump in court. How does that feel tonight?
All right, Lawrence. Well, thanks for having me. Great to be back with you. And look, it's yet another victory for the Constitution, another victory for the true rule of law, not the rule of law that Donald Trump likes to talk about when he's breaking the law on a daily basis. And frankly, it's vindication because we've known this all along. There's so much that was wrong about the operation in Los Angeles. We knew it was without proper justification or merit. It's taken the legal process to underscore that and confirm that with Judge Breyer's ruling yesterday. But we also know that the whole operation is not what Donald Trump continues to say that it is. Whether it's Los Angeles, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Portland, whether it's North Carolina, elsewhere across the country, for all their talk about the dangerous, violent criminals, the fact of the matter is the vast majority of people that they detain, that they arrest, that they've deported, do not have violent criminal convictions. There's so much wrong with all of this, but I just have to emphasize this. I'm going to paraphrase Judge Breyer when he says that Donald Trump is not interested in checks and balances. He's just interested in a blank check, both financially, do whatever he wants with federal resources, but also when it comes to powers. This president does not have unlimited, unchecked powers. We're going to continue to rein him back in.
Yeah, that blank check line was in the first line of the judge's ruling. The judge also said this. Defendant's argument, defendant being Donald Trump, defendant's argument for a president to hold unchecked power to control state troops would wholly upend the federalism that is at the heart of our system of government. And to see it in simple print like that, Senator, after we've known this our entire lives and had to live through months of people in this country asking, is this okay? To see it finally spelled out so clearly there, by the judge must be a real relief to you and to Californians.
It is. It is. And I hope it continues to open up the eyes of my colleagues in Congress, both sides of the aisle, and people across the country. Because we tried to sound the alarm back in June. What was happening in Los Angeles was wrong. The federalization and the deployment of state National Guard troops into a state against the governor's wishes, into a city over the objections of not just the local mayor, local elected leadership, but the local sheriff, the local police department is practically unprecedented. We knew it would be ineffective. In fact, it was counterproductive. But it's Donald Trump's MO to try to fan the flames, try to escalate tensions, and justify further escalation on his part. I came back to Washington after that press conference and warned my colleagues if they can do this in Los Angeles, they can do it anywhere in the country on any issue they choose to try to quench dissent. And sadly, we've seen what's happened in and around Washington, D.C., in and around Chicago, in and around Portland, in and around Memphis. They're in New Orleans now. They continue this campaign of terror under the guise of public safety and immigration enforcement. We know it's anything but. And, case by case, legal victory by legal victory, we're going to rein this back in.
Senator Alex Padilla, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.
And coming up, Donald Trump's polling hits an all-time low, especially on affordability, which happens to be the focus of Sherrod Brown's campaign for Senate in Ohio. Former Senator Sherrod Brown will join us next. A new very bad poll for Donald Trump from the Associated Press shows Donald Trump at an all-time low, with 67% disapproving of Donald Trump's economic policy. At 1:37 p.m. today, Donald Trump responded to his new low in the polls in a social media post saying, "When will polls reflect the greatness of America at this point in time and how bad it was just 1 year ago? Just 1 year ago, the American economy was flying high thanks to Joe Biden. Then came Donald Trump." Today, Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez responded to Donald Trump, calling the affordability issue a hoax.
Everyday people can't afford our groceries. We can't afford our rent. We can't afford our mortgages. And we can't afford these tariffs that the president has put down. And while we and everyday people are struggling, they're out here saying that that's all some kind of fairy tale. And it shows how disconnected the president and this administration is from everyday people.
And today, Republicans in the Senate once again voted to increase health insurance costs more than 100% for people who purchase health insurance through the Affordable Care Act marketplace, when Republicans blocked a vote offered by Senator Chuck Schumer on extending subsidies for the purchase of health insurance for 3 years. Sherrod Brown is a Democratic candidate for Senate in Ohio, basing his campaign, as other winning Democrats already have this year, on affordability.
Everywhere I go in Ohio, I hear the same thing. Prices are just too high. Beef is up 15%. Coffee is up 41%. And turkey, up 40%. And what's John Husted doing about it? Absolutely nothing. Washington politicians like John Husted haven't done a single thing to lower costs for you or your family. Not for your groceries, your utilities, or your health care. John Husted is not doing his job, and Ohioans are paying the price.
Joining us now is former Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, who is running for the United States Senate in 2026. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Senator. We have seen some remarkable wins by Democrats in special elections. We're going to have someone who just won in Georgia in that legislative district race down there join us after you to tell us how he did it. What we're hearing in every one of those campaigns is that Democrats are winning, among other things, on affordability. Is that the issue right now?
Well, what I'm hearing is the system's rigged, and John Husted's doing nothing about it. John Husted on TV today said people should just earn more, as if that's easy to do. I mean, this, John Husted now has gone to the Senate floor today for the 9th time and voted for his special interest friends, for the insurance companies, and we will see insurance rates double and triple come the new year. And he should spend time, instead of going to Washington shows and talking about people, exhorting people to earn more, he should come to grocery stores in Toledo, where I'm going tomorrow, or Columbus, where I live, or in Mansfield, where I grew up, and stand in one of those stores, stand at the checkout line, and watch people literally put food back in their cart because they can't afford it when they see the prices. And that's no hoax, like some say. That's reality, and he should pay attention to that before he votes again with his special interest friends.
And the Democrats did pick up some Republican votes today in that vote in the Senate. But as you say, other Republicans who will be up for re-election next year are still voting to deny those subsidies for health care.
I was going to say I don't get it, Lawrence, but I do get it because I know the pull of their special interest friends. I've watched John Husted's career, and he was a special interest guy in Columbus, lined up with the banks, lined up with the electric companies for sure, lined up with the oil companies, lined up with the insurance interests. And in Washington, he's doing the same thing and not representing the public, not getting out much and listening to the public. You don't have to spend much time listening to people to see how bad this situation is, how people feel like the system's rigged, and how people feel like so many politicians are in bed with those special interests, and there's nobody fighting for them in Washington. John Husted certainly is, and I spent, as you know, Lawrence, on this show, I spent my career taking on the drug companies, taking on Wall Street, taking on electric power companies that frankly are screwing the public day after day after day.
So with Donald Trump's poll numbers declining, now hitting all-time lows in his time in the White House, and with this string of Democratic victories that we've seen and really changing the map in terms of the point spread, even that race in Tennessee that the Republicans were supposed to win by 22 and they only won by 9. This opens up all sorts of possibilities, and it seems to be something that, if that trend holds, would be very helpful to you in Ohio.
Yeah, I assume it would, but I'm not a pundit, as I've said on the show, and as you know. At some point, though, you wonder the special interest hold on people like John Husted, that they see polls like that. They aren't out enough. They hear some of their friends maybe tell them that the public's pretty upset, but they don't get out enough to do something to really hear it. But at some point, I guess they're going to break the hold they have, that these special interests have on them. But John Husted spent his career always in the tank with these special interest groups. So I don't know. I can't judge. I assume some of them will break that stranglehold, but John Husted's had a history of always being on the side of these special interests. I mean, think back. He was the deciding vote back last summer on the big tax bill, where billionaires, where 490,000 Ohioans will lose their health insurance, a dozen rural hospitals will close, veterans get hurt, middle income people who are using food stamps because they're not making enough money get hurt. Food banks are so oversubscribed, they get hurt. Yet he still votes for this tax cut for billionaires, even though I guess his office is hearing these things, but his ears don't seem to. He doesn't seem to be listening. At some point, maybe he will, but throughout his career, he stood with those interest groups.
Sherrod Brown, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Lawrence, always. Thank you.
And coming up, the Democrat who flipped that Georgia State House district that Donald Trump won by 12 points in 2024 will join us to tell us, and Sherrod Brown will be listening, how he did it. That's next. Affordability wins again. The Democratic candidate won a legislative district in Georgia that Donald Trump won by 12 points in 2024. Democrat Eric Gissler defeated the Republican candidate 51-49 on Tuesday in a special election for a seat in the Georgia State House. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reports Eric Gissler's stunning victory in a district designed for Republicans to win sent shockwaves across Georgia's political landscape and supercharged Democrats. The Georgia Democratic Party chair said after the victory there are 17 Georgia House districts that were more Democratic than this one last year. Republicans should be very worried. This was part of Eric Gissler's message to Georgia voters.
We've had enough MAGA extremism. Eric Gissler is running to lower our costs, make healthcare affordable, and get our economy working again. Vote Eric Gissler. Reject MAGA politics.
Joining us now is Georgia State Representative-elect Eric Gissler. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I've been so eager to hear from you since Tuesday night when I saw those numbers coming in from Georgia. How did you do it? What did Democrats need to know?
Yeah, I mean, how we did it, we had the right message. Came off of that big Public Service Commission win in November. It was all about affordability. And we just kind of pressed that message. It really resonates with voters in the district. And in addition, I mean, we had a fantastic team. We had so many energized volunteers coming off that Public Service Commission win in November. They were excited to go out and knock doors and get voters back to the polls one more time and take advantage of this opportunity.
I see Donald Trump in your ad there. What about the Trump factor in this election?
Yeah, and so this district is very interesting because it does include part of Athens, which is home of the University of Georgia. It's a pretty liberal town, but it's also the rest of the district kind of goes out to the next county over, which is more rural and definitely more Republican. But the Republicans in that district, a lot of them work at the university. They're highly educated. They have higher incomes. I really think of most of them more as more the traditional conservative types than the MAGA Republican types. And a lot of them, I think, held their nose last year and voted for the Republican Party, Donald Trump. They believed what he was selling about lower prices and a stronger economy, and that's not what they're getting. Instead, they're getting higher prices due to chaotic tariff policy. We've had over 1 million layoffs this year, and quite frankly, they're an active assault on people's constitutional rights, and that's not what these traditional Republicans voted for last year.
In your campaign, did Donald Trump in effect become the face of higher prices?
I wouldn't say that. I didn't talk about Trump when I was talking to voters that much. That makes a great ad, and it's true. He's definitely leading the country in a terrible direction, and I think people are recognizing that. But they're also recognizing, when they go to fill up their gas tank and they go to the grocery store, and they have to, refinance, and they have such a higher, mortgage payment, rent payments, especially in a college town like Athens. I mean, they're seeing that every day, and maybe they're associated with Trump, maybe they're not. The one thing they know for sure is that the same party's been in power in Atlanta for 22 years, and they don't really seem interested in fixing it.
Do you think this translates to other districts in Georgia as clearly as the Democratic Party seems to think it does?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Chair Bailey is absolutely right. In some of my other political work, I've looked at House districts all around the state. And this one is not near the top of the most flippable. There are a lot of richer targets that we can go for next year. And I think this message is going to resonate in a year from now just as well as it does now, because I don't see any sign that the Republicans are changing their tactics.
Georgia State Representative-elect Eric Gissler, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And a very special last word is next. No one makes me feel luckier than Joyce Chazale. Lucky to know her, because Joyce Chazale is a miracle. I met her 9 years ago in Malawi when she had been sent home from high school because her family could not afford to pay the school's fees Free public education in Malawi extends only through elementary school. High school is not free. And I got the chance to tell Joyce that she could go back to school because we were going to pay her school fees.
We're going to make sure you have school fees to go all the way through and finish.
Wow.
And finish Form 3 and finish Form 4.
Wow.
And graduate and finish this school.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really very excited. Yeah, I don't know how to thank you. I'm very excited. I didn't know that this chance can come to me. Yeah. Because there are a lot of girls out there who are lacking school fees, who are getting married because they don't have someone to pay for them. So I'm very thankful because of this. And I promise that I'm going to work hard not to make you worried.
Joyce promised to work hard, and she did. She's now in her last semester at Kamuzu University in Malawi.
So I hope after finishing my undergrad, I'm going to pursue research and academia in the area of molecular microbiology as well as infectious diseases, whereby there I will be focusing on the pathogens, trying to find out the pathogen, how they are working, how they are causing different infections such as HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, and also the antimicrobial resistance. I would like to be seeing that how the microorganisms interact with the drugs, because it's currently an issue whereby we're having a lot of antimicrobial resistance out there. So I would like to be at the forefront of doing and understanding what is going on, detecting as well as controlling those pathogens and how they work and how they interact with the humankind.
Joyce is doing that important work thanks entirely to your generosity to the Kind Fund, the partnership I created with UNICEF to deliver desks like this one to elementary schools in Malawi that don't have any desks, and to provide scholarships for girls to attend high school in Malawi.
I am where I am because of the help. Because if I wasn't helped, I couldn't have been here. I couldn't have made it.
On that day when I met Joyce, she recited a poem that she wrote that I know many of you will remember seeing here on this program.
My poem is entitled Little by Little.
Little by little?
Yeah.
Okay.
Little by little we'll go. No matter how far the distance is, we are not shaken. Little by little we'll go and reach our destination.
And now Joyce is a role model for other girls who are in high school today, thanks entirely to your contributions to the Kind Fund. Last month, Joyce joined a group of 7 girls who are now in college, who finished high school thanks to the Kind Fund scholarships. They accompanied me to Chipoka Secondary School, where dozens of girls are being supported by Kind Fund scholarships. The high school girls got to see their futures when they chatted with the Kind Fund graduates who are now in college. It was the first time they met girls in college who were once in their same situation, worrying how they were going to be able to attend high school when they couldn't afford the school fees before they got their Kind Fund scholarships. Joyce read an updated version of her poem to an audience of girls who are living every word of that poem.
And when you finally arrive, you will look back and see that it wasn't the destination that shaped you, but the journey that made you whole. Little by little you go, little by little you grow. Thank you.
To help more girls finish high school, you can go to lastworddesks.ms.now and make a contribution in any amount. No contribution is too small. You can specify that your contribution is for scholarships for girls or for desks, and you can make a gift in the name of anyone on your holiday gift list, and UNICEF will send them an acknowledgement of your gift. When I was at the airport leaving Malawi the day after we visited that school, the school sent me a picture that is by far the highest honor of my life. The girls renamed the room where we were meeting. The school holds its graduation ceremony on that stage every year. And at this year's graduation ceremony, when people look up and see that name and ask, who's that? I hope the girls tell them what I told them, that I'm just the lucky guy who gets to visit their school and meet them, but it's really you, the viewers of this program, who are helping those girls step up to that graduation stage. The girls wrote a song to sing their thanks to you and to UNICEF USA for everything you've given them, including their school uniforms and their book bags.
Papa.